Well, Jacob, this week I am totally stoked for the good times. As you saw earlier in the show, we did a road test of the new ZX4RR, and you could tell from my introduction, I am super stoked for this bike. I mean, it's one of the most exciting motorcycles I've seen here in Canada in the last decade. It's a very cool bike.
Yeah, it's such a unique little rig. There's not a lot of small, in fact, there's no small displacement inline fours on the market, not here in North America. And, Kawasaki was able to bring this one to our shores, and we're pretty pleased about that.
Yeah, and it looks great in this 40th anniversary Ninja motif. I love the look of this bike, but why are we here in a dyno at Brooklyn Cycle Racing in Whitby, Ontario? Why the dyno?
I'm glad you've asked, and I'm sure that in that review, your reviewer probably asked the question to himself, where am I going to race this? I want to race this. This is a race bike at its heart. Yeah. And so I'm here to announce that we are launching the Niagara Racecrafters Kawasaki Ninja ZX4RR Cup. So we'll race in the Bridgestone Canadian Superbike National Championship Series, a spec series just for these bikes.
Wow, that is exciting. A spec series means that all the bikes are going to be similar, right? They're all set up the same, so you're racing against similar motorcycles are going to be all Ninjas, right?
That's right. This Ninja, this ZX4RR, it has superbike DNA. It has that monocoque chassis. It has the inline four-cylinder engine. It is built for the racetrack from the ground up. And so giving people an access point to that racetrack performance at an affordable price, that's what we wanted to do with this class. And, awaken your super sport with our ZX4RR.
When you saw that this bike was coming to Canada, at the marketing department at Kawasaki, were you thinking, man, we've got to do something, we've got to take this thing and create a spec series? Were you ahead of the game on that?
Yeah, as soon as we heard that the bike was coming, first we sat around for about a week and a half with a big grin on our face. Once we'd wiped that away and started getting down to business, we thought about, that very question, where are you going to race this bike? This is a bike that's screaming, quite literally when you hear it, for a racetrack. So finding a place and a way to give people access to that bike was important to us. We knew that it would be hard to fit into some of the other categories. It's the performance level is above what the lightweight class is doing at the moment. Yeah. The performance level is a little bit more accessible than what the Super Sport series is, but we knew that people would want to race it. So creating a one-make class and a one-make championship that people can approach at an affordable cost and go racing, that really appealed to us. Me personally, I find that pretty exciting. So I'm glad that we could put it together, and we've had help from Bridgestone CSBK, from Niagara Racecrafters. They set this bike up and homologated the bike for us, set the rules, with support from Hindle and some other participants here in Canada. So this is a really Canadian racing effort, and we're looking forward to seeing it on the track.
Very cool. Well, I can see with things like mirrors, turn signals, if this bike is not ready to go, that one is. How about on the next segment, you tell us what it is, what you have to do to take this and make it ready for the track. Can we do that?
I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Jacob, this week on The Good Times, we're going to talk a little bit about really taking your motorcycle to the max and really enjoying the good times. What if you took a street bike like the ZX4RR and you were able to take it to the racetrack? That says good times all over it. So you guys have come up with a spec series. This is a great example of what it takes to take a street bike and make it a race bike. What have you guys done?
Exactly. This is a really exciting bike. This is the bike that we've used to set the rules for that new spec series, to make the racing affordable and attainable, but still make it exciting and still extract the maximum performance from our ZX4RR. Right. So this bike in street trim with no fuel in it weighs about 399 pounds.
Right.
This bike as it sits is 45 pounds less than that.
That is a huge number. Unbelievable.
It's a big difference. And then the engine in this one is now putting out about 30 more horsepower than the engine was in this one.
Holy smokes. How did you do that?
So we flashed the ECU. So we took the ECU, the computer brain inside the bike, we changed the mapping and how that sends fuel and air to the cylinders, how it controls the throttle opening to extract the maximum performance from this 400cc inline four engine.
Right, so that's why we're in a dyno room. You use the dyno to do that, right? To do some tuning?
Exactly right. Yeah, Niagara Racecrafters down in Niagara on the lake. Larry from there, this is really his baby. So he took the bike, he homologated it, made sure that it fit the series. He designed the rules package to make it accessible and affordable for everybody. So a big debt to Niagara Racecrafters because they're not only sponsoring this series, but they've really built it from the ground up and made it possible for Canadians to race this really exciting bike.
Well, you know, the obvious things are you've taken off the lights, the turn signals, the stock exhaust is gone, and that's how you start to save weight, and you also work towards making things safer. What are the sort of the top line things you've done to get this ready for the track?
Yeah, you mentioned all the obvious ones. Obviously, we don't need mirrors on the track. No one's looking behind them. We took the lights off. We've changed the exhaust. It's got a Hindle, so Hindle right out here out of Ontario, Canada. It's got a full Hindle system on it. I talked about the ECU. We've changed the suspension components a little bit, so cartridge in the middle.
Right.
We took out the side stand, and that side stand, that was a really cool moment because that showed what the DNA of this bike is. It showed that it was built from the ground up to be a race bike because it was just an unbolt. We unbolted the side stand, the hanger, everything came with it.
You know, it's really just amazing to see how much work has gone into homologating this bike, but it's also incredible to think you can take a street bike, you can turn it into a race bike, and a spec series. It's going to be really exciting.
It's going to be so exciting to see these on the track. And like as you mentioned, the cool thing about this is that it's not a lot of money and it's not a lot of effort. It's just a lot of little things to get it from this to this race-ready bike that we have in front of us.
Yeah, but being that light and having that much extra power, it's going to be wicked.
It's going to be a blast.
Very cool. You know, Jacob, I'm really loving where the good times are going this season, our segments, because now we've been doing some segments that we've never really done before, which is how to take a street bike and get it ready for a track. And last week we were talking all about how Kawasaki helped to homologate this motorcycle for the racing series that's coming up this summer and here in Canada, the National Series. We talked about unleashing the power of this motorcycle, and we talked about how we made it lighter, making it obviously better for the racetrack. But we didn't talk about safety. Can you show us just what you've done to help improve the safety of this bike when it's being raced?
Yeah, so a bunch of different things that we do just to make it so that when you're out there in the heat of battle, you're not creating extra issues for yourself. So the first of those is the brake guard here, the brake lever guard. And that's to stop activating the brake lever even if you're in close quarters with someone. You can imagine if you hit somebody at the back and they activate your front brake lever, all of a sudden you're looking right at the ground.
Yeah.
That's always going to be problematic on any sort of racing machine. The other thing is, after you've changed all the ergonomics, we've shifted the clip-ons down to make them so you've got that more aggressive riding style.
Right.
We've moved the rear sets up and moved where your feet are so that you're over the bike in a more aggressive way. Well, you need some protection for your ankles and your feet, but also if you crash, for your hand.
Right.
And that's why we run what we call our shark fin. And I've actually got personal experience with that device, and it saved my hand in a crash that I had last year. So that device is, those two devices, that brake lever guard and that shark fin, really protect the rider in the event of some misadventure out there. And then we have other features as well where we're protecting the track and the riders around us. So if we have a mechanical failure, if we have a crash, we spill fluid on the track, it becomes slippery. That's carnage after that.
Right.
So we safety wire everything. Our brake caliper bolts are safety wired, our oil drain plug is safety wired, and it's just an extra little bit of security to make sure that the bike stays together when we're putting it through its paces out on the racetrack.
Yeah, now, and you brought up a very important fact about all this. You're not just talking about this from the marketing point of view. You do this. You race in the National Series, so you know what you're talking about, especially when we're talking about safety. And as well, one of the things you didn't mention is the bodywork has also been changed, right?
That's right, yeah. And it's not only to make it so that it's cheaper and more affordable if you do crash. It's not only for aerodynamics, but also because that plastic that we have on these machines is sturdy and durable and great for the street and really long lasting.
Yeah.
But if you crash on the track, it splinters. And
millions of pieces, yeah.
So this fiberglass based stuff, it holds together better. It doesn't splinter and leave shards all over the track.
Right.
It's the cleanup's better, the cleanup's faster, and it's more crash worthy. And what we say when we say crash worthy is you can crash the bike, pick it up, and it's not a lot of effort to get it rolling again for the next session.
Right. Wow, well, this has been a very cool overview of the safety aspects that go into racing, because for the average viewer, they would look at this bike and just think, oh, it just looks like this bike without mirrors, but there's a lot that goes into the safety factor. It's pretty impressive.
It's a cool rig. Thanks for letting me show it to you.
You bet. Jacob, we got a beautiful day today. You know, last week we were talking about getting your street bike ready for a race and how to take your race bike and get it ready for a summer of racing. We haven't really talked about getting your bike out of storage for a summer of fun on the street. Let's do it.
Yeah, and what better day? You know, it's a beautiful, warm, sunny day. These are the exact days when guys like you and I, we take our bikes out of the garage and we're revved up, we're ready to get riding. Not so fast.
Right, slow down. Okay, so hopefully the bike was covered over. I've taken the cover off the bike. Now, what do we do?
Now, take a moment to lovingly look over your motorcycle. Walk around, inspect it, have a really good look at the fork seals, the engine, make sure there's no fluids or anything seeping out or leaking out over the winter.
Right.
Really, you know, if you can, take a moment to clean it. Right, and go over the bike, get intimate with it to make sure that nothing's amiss, nothing's corroded or seeped or leaked over the winter months.
Yeah, and maybe make sure nothing's loose. Like even sort of make sure something hasn't come loose and you put it away and you didn't notice that, right?
Yeah, the good old jiggle check just to make sure that everything's as it should be and as you remember it was when you went away. Also make sure that chain is lubed.
Right.
Again, make sure you're protecting the tyres when you do that. And then not only check the tyre pressures, make sure that they're at the right level, but also inspect the tyres. Make sure they haven't cracked or faded or deteriorated over the winter months and that they're still safe to keep the bike underneath you.
Right, and make sure when you were cleaning the bike, you didn't get any silicone cleaners on those tires. You want them sticky, not shiny.
That's right. We want our rubber on the road, not our rubber on the road over a layer of lacquer and cleaning fluid.
Okay, what about the oil? Should we change the oil before we go for a ride?
Well, what better time than the first moment in the season to do that oil and filter change? That way you've got the right fluids in there, you know, Kawasaki Performance oil in the bike, ready to go for the summer, so that you know that the bike will keep running at its best the whole time. Maybe you had the bike in storage, maybe that's something they did during the storage period, but if you had it, like me, you know, in your garage or even inside your house, now's a good time to get that oil change done.
Okay, so we've done the visualization, we've done the shaking, we've checked our chain, we checked tire pressures, tires look good. We've changed the oil, time to go. Can we fire it up and go?
Ready to go, fire it up, just make sure that jacket still fits.
The good times. Jacob, this week on the Good Times, I want to just discuss the fact that we are both celebrating anniversaries this season. It's pretty wild. This is our 35th, and this is the 40th of the Ninja. It's hard to believe.
That's right, yeah. Your show, TSN Motorcycle Experience, has been around for almost as long as the Ninja's been around, but this is an important milestone for Kawasaki. You know, this is 40 years of the Ninja, 40 years since we saw that red GPZ 900 blast down the straight next to the jet fighters in Top Gun with Tom Cruise on board it. So 40 years of this iconic model. It's probably the most diverse nameplate in motorcycling, and it's not only shown the power and the prestige of Kawasaki over all those years, but also helped get a whole bunch of new riders to access the good times.
I remember as a kid sort of hearing young people talk about it's a Ninja. Like the name Ninja was just like iconic with fast motorcycles, and certainly that Tom Cruise scene. I mean, we went out last year to Niagara and that fella that had restored one of those bikes was still jazzed about that GPZ 900.
That's right. It's a nameplate that really just locked into the hearts and minds of not only motorcycle fans and riders, but anyone that's remotely interested in anything that's power sports. And you raise a really good point. When you go to a party, when you talk to people, you say, "Oh, what do you ride? Oh, is it like one of those Ninjas?"
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's what it is. It's a Ninja, and you know, Ninja has a uniquely North American story. That nameplate came about, you know, because of North American marketing efforts and trying to find a way to communicate exactly what the essence of this bike was to the world at large. And I think that, you know, over those years, Ninja's really captured that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when I think back to the 35 years of doing this show, what stands out in my mind is the Canadian Superbike Series. You talk about a North American image. I think of the top five, those five guys. I think of all of those #1 plates and those 5 famous Canadian road racers, right? And what they did for the brand.
No, exactly. You know, there's 14 Canadian Superbike Championships aboard Ninjas, you know, in the flagship class with guys like Steve Crevier, Don Munro, Michael Taylor, Jordan Zoke,
Francis Martin.
Yeah, and Francis Martin,
There's your 5.
Of course. There's your 5 right there. And, you know, you think about the legacy of Ninja in Canada, and we're going to celebrate that this year as well. We're not only celebrating it with these gorgeous 40th anniversary liveries here on the lineup that you see, and the whole Ninja lineup this year.
Yeah.
But also we're going to celebrate it in our Good Times segments on your show this year as well. I'm really excited.
Okay, well deserved. It's 2 anniversaries in one, but yeah, that's great. Colin, this week on the Good Times, I want to thank you for joining us because we've been celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Ninja and discussing a lot of that discussion has been around racing heritage. And when you look at the Canadian Superbike Series and the history of that, Ninja's been there for 40 years as well, right?
Well, 1980 was the start of Canadian Superbike. So that's the era of Lang Hindle, George Moran, Ruben McMurder. Top 3 guys were all Kawasaki riders. The Ninja came along in '84. It was initially a production bike, GPZR 900 Ninja, which was the first time we used the name, and it was an era when most of the Japanese bikes were rushing towards crazy nomenclature, right? A lot of SRADs and things like that.
Yeah.
So the Ninja was nice because you could pronounce that. That was handy. And a guy named Colin Gibb did very, very well on the original one, which was raced as a production bike. And back then that production was completely stock,
Right.
great big exhaust pipes, all that stuff. And that bike was actually quite competitive in Superbike. At one point, Colin Gibb was leading the Superbike Championship on his production class Ninja 900R. So yeah, it's most of the sport bikes have been called Ninja. They have been predominant in our series, and they've always had a pretty high profile. And of course, you've been speaking to Jordan Zoke, who has the highest of the highest profiles because he rewrote the rule book. We wrote the record book, but really kind of the rule book too.
Now we've just discovered maybe the rule book too.
Yeah, anyway, Jordan has had a big influence on the series, and that's fair and rightly so, and I think he's a good fit with Kawasaki. I'm sure he told you the story about the bike that was in the lobby at Kawasaki, which they had so many super bikes, they had some they didn't need, and that wound up being his first race bike at Shubenacadie, Nova Scotia. He almost won his second time out in the rain at Shannonville when my 3-year-old daughter called him Jordan of the Jungle because she had just seen a movie she liked, and that's kind of stuck with Jordan, that nickname. So yeah, Jordan on and off has been the guy with Kawasaki, and he's flown the flag, and he's the right kind of character because it's always been the slightly crazy people who raced Kawasaki's, and Jordan fit in well there.
Yeah, well, I also have fond memories of Don Monroe, Mike
Less
Taylor.
crazy,
Less
more
crazy.
crazy.
Don Monroe, not crazy at all. Francis Martin, Jordan. It's been an interesting run, but I guess...
And that's that 9-year run you just described
Yeah.
it, right? So those guys combined for 9 consecutive championships that kind of led to the modern era of superbike racing and a whole bunch of changes in the series that Kawasaki participated in. And for a while there, it was Kawasaki versus whoever, leading all the way up to BMW right now.
Amazing, amazing. You know, we've been talking about the 40th anniversary of the Ninja. I've been thinking all this time about bikes with plates on them, but you know, there's other kinds of plates. And,
Yes, and frequently number 1 plate.
Number 1 plates. They've been there in terms of when you think of Canadian superbike racing, the Ninja's been right
And the other
there.
thing I'd like to mention is Kawasaki have been very good about the trickle down of technology. They're famous as a builder of extremely strong power plants, but our tracks tend to lean towards motorcycles that handle because they're tighter and bumpier. And Kawasaki have frequently produced bikes that privateers could succeed on too. And we've had a number of privateers do very well with Kawasaki's, and that's important. In Canada, not everybody can get an A ride, right? And we need a grid, a field to compete against. So that Kawasaki have contributed, and that there have been a lot of strong Kawasaki's in all the classes, including lightweight, which is dominated by Kawasaki currently.
Wow, amazing. Well, it's been super fun to go down the memory lane as we celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Ninja. Jeff, you know, this week on the Good Times, we've been celebrating the 40th anniversary of Ninja, and I thought it'd be really important to speak to you because you were right there in the thick of things in terms of superbike racing back in the 90s. What was your title back then?
Went from pit helper to chassis assistant. I mean, working with Tony Russell and Don Monroe, a little bit with Mike Taylor, and a lot of the kind of key Kawasaki people back in the day, but went from just kind of a guy that hung around and was mesmerized by all the Kawasaki-ness and kind of worked my way up through to, I guess, special projects, which kind of looking after racing to eventually managing the road racing team and racing in general for Kawasaki.
Well, I know back in those days I was co-hosting the Canadian Superbike Series with Colin Fraser, and I remember you as the guy with the poker face. You didn't say very much, so now I get to ask you the question. Back then, you were on a string of runs, 9 number 1 Superbike plates. What was the secret to success back in that first batch with the 7?
Well, I guess beyond having a great batch of riders, you know, as we talked about with Crevier and Taylor and Monroe and Don riding a 600 and in Superbike, all of our guys, but I think the ZX7 lent itself very well to, as the tuners used to say, give itself a very large window to be able to get the setup right. And over the years, as the factory gave us little key kit parts to work with, that just allowed us to take that street bike and refine it and hone it even more, which allowed changeable conditions, rain, different things that happening to be able to get to the podium. And I think it helped propel all of our top guys and the top talent we had at the time and the tuners to be able to give us a race-winning package.
Yeah, well, so really what I'm hearing here is that the factory back in Japan gave you a toolbox, that you had access to a lot of special parts. What about later on in that development of the 7 as you were collecting those '1 plates? Did that continue, or what happened next?
Well, I mean, as different models came on board from other manufacturers and as the ZX7 started to get to its end of life before the 10 arrived, we needed a little extra help, and pleading our case to Japan after 7, 8, 9 championships, we started getting access to some of the maybe World Superbike parts, some very exotic gear-driven cams and different internal engine components that really helped us, in exhaust and what have you, that really helped us go to that next level and compete with some of the thousands, even under a 750cc. Engine. So it was again, the handling, but we got some pretty key parts to make it go fast.
Well, you guys did go fast, and I have to say, I was there. It was remarkable to see what you were doing with those bikes. So it's been great to hear. The secret to the success? The magic toolbox.
Little magic toolbox.
Jacob, this week on the Good Times, I want to talk about firsts, because one of the fun things about doing the 35th anniversary show and the 40th anniversary of the Ninja, you know, for instance, Colin and I have been talking all season long about the evolution of the motorcycle, and I know Kawasaki was there. They've had some firsts too, right?
Absolutely, and Ninja's been at the cutting edge of Kawasaki development and motorcycle development for its whole life.
Right. So what comes to mind if we go back, really go far back, 40th anniversary of Ninja, what's the first you think of?
For me, it's Ram Air. You know, Ram Air existed before Kawasaki. It existed on the Pontiac GTO in the 60s, but we really popularized it. Ninja really brought Ram Air to the masses of motorcycling. You think about those twin induction tubes on that ZX7R, that iconic look, or the big wide mouth on the ZX9. You know, those sorts of improvements to motorcycling that Kawasaki really ran with and developed to the zenith.
I think of the first aluminum monocoque frame, radial brakes.
Yeah,
right?
Radial brakes on the ZX6R, that first monocoque frame that you talked about on the ZX12R back in the day. There's been this raft of developments and changes. Ninja's always at the cutting edge. You know, even smaller things like self-healing paint like we've got here on this H2R.
Well, you want to talk about the paint. Yes, that was huge, but what about this little thing down here? Let's talk about that first.
The first supercharger on a production motorcycle, you know, and Kawasaki really used all of our expertise in aerospace and shipbuilding and all of that technology that's come from decades of a really diverse company, and distill that expertise down into that supercharger that brings so much joy to so many people on bikes like this H2R.
And let's just touch upon one more first. Hybrid.
Yeah, the world's first strong hybrid motorcycle, the Ninja 7 Hybrid.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that at another time, but yeah, that bike is a very special bit of future forward work, and you know, also electrification with the Ninja E1 as well.
All very cool, and that's what makes celebrating these anniversaries so much fun. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
You know, Jordan, it's such an honor to be rolling out the Good Times with you this week. We've been celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Ninja. But you've won so many #1 plates in the Canadian Superbike Series, I've lost track. Like, you have a lot riding Kawasaki.
Yeah, 14 more and I'll be able to retire.
But you were saying you have a #1 plate in every decade since you started. When was your first Superbike championship?
My first Superbike championship was my first full year in Superbike, and that was in 1998.
Right, and then you have one #1 plate in every decade. So
Every decade, yeah, at least one, yeah.
And you have such a close relationship with this company, with Kawasaki. I have to ask you, like, what has been the one continuing factor, the one thing that has been continuous all the way through to help you chase those #1 plates?
Well, besides, Kawasaki having a great motorcycle for us to ride, I would say it's their passion, especially in Canada. Kawasaki Canada alone has always been such a passion, racing-driven company.
Yeah.
And so, with their support, it's been, a lot of fun, and you can see that all over the world for them too as well. But it just seems to be that little extra bit in Canada that they've been passion-driven.
Yeah, I remember back when I was actually one of the owners of the Canadian Superbike Series with Colin Fraser, and we were running the series. I remember that run of #1 plates that Kawasaki had, 9 in a row. And I thought you were going to say, Dave, it's the secret sauce has been the engines. It's the way Kawasaki makes the motors. But that's really interesting. It's actually the company that has sort of pushed you forward every year, right?
Yeah, like I said, they make a great motorcycle, and they've had great engines. We've had strong points and weak points over the years, and all that. But I think the support you need to go racing at that level too is so important.
Yeah.
People don't realize that the fitness of the rider and the support from your sponsors and the manufacturers are there. And but yeah, the Kawasaki, we always know the Ninjas are always super fast, and they handle well. Right now the strong point about the current bike I'm riding is it turns really well. Mm-hmm. So we're really focusing on making it stay nimble and turn, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's right here, and the season is right in the thick of it right now. So looking forward to see how things happen at the checkered flag at the end of the season here in 2024. Good luck.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, hopefully a few more wins and keep it rolling.
Jacob, this has been fun on the Good Times all season long. We've been celebrating the 35th anniversary of Motorcycle Experience, but the 40th anniversary of the Ninja. And you said somewhere in there we've got to talk about this motorcycle because it created such a splash.
Yeah, when it was launched, it really felt like it was the culmination, the ultimate expression of Ninja, and what it is. And that's the supercharged Ninja H2R. And this bike, 310 horsepower, out of the 998cc engine. It is phenomenal to ride. We've put Jordan out on it on the track. I know that he's come back with a big grin. There's nothing like this motorcycle on the planet.
Yeah, and that's why I said it was a big splash when it was launched. I remember making a trip into Toronto to go to the consumer show just to see it. Why did Kawasaki do it?
Because we can. Kawasaki has this raft of expertise in aerospace, in shipbuilding, in aeronautics and aerodynamics, and took all of that, turbine engines from helicopters and jet planes and boats, and shrunk it all into this little unit of extreme joy and exhilaration that you see bolted to the side of this bike. But that supercharger technology really shows what Kawasaki can do when it throws its engineering weight behind something.
Right, and that supercharger, even just the blades and what they're made of and how fast they spin, like all of those numbers are just mind-blowing.
Oh, to put it into perspective, it spins about 9 times more than engine RPM. So that means that at 12,000 RPM, this thing's doing about 130,000 RPM, the supercharger impeller. The tips of that blade, that turbine, are moving so fast that they break the sound barrier.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you said, it just generates a pile of horsepower, over 300, right?
It's like riding an ocean wave. It just surges with just this immense amount of power that you can feel the whole way through the rev range, right from the start. There really is nothing like it. I know it sounds cliche, but there is nothing like an H2R. It is unique in the world and deserves its own little bit of celebration as we celebrate 40 years of Kawasaki Ninja.
Well, it's been fun doing it. I'm glad we did. Well worth it. Jacob, all season long we've been celebrating on the Good Times the 40th anniversary of the Ninja, and it's coming through loud and clear just how important racing has been to the Ninja brand. I mean, what was the first race, 85?
That's right, yeah, we launched the bike in 84. In 85, we had, a group of guys from the factory that said, hey, we got to race this thing. And they took out that year's Ninja, the GPZ 750R. They took it and they entered it in the Asian Endurance Series. They entered it in the Suzuka 8-hour. It was completely stock. They ran around 188 odd laps, finished 10th on the thing, bone stock. And that really was the genesis of, Ninja in racing circles and on the world stage. And Ninja is to racing as racing is to Ninja. They're both integral to each other. It's part of racing's DNA has Ninja in it, and Ninja DNA has racing in it, and the two can't be separated.
Right. Well, they went on to some more world endurance races, and I guess it was just to keep proving and developing, right?
Not only to develop, but also to demonstrate our prowess and also our reliability. World endurance racing was a big part of the Ninja success story, because not only were these bikes lightning fast and exciting, but they lasted the distance as well.
Right.
And, from 91 to 94, we won 3 straight FIM World Endurance Series, which is... that's a pretty serious record.
Yeah.
And we have records as well in Le Mans, the Boulder 24-hour, those iconic 24-hour motorcycle races, and we've won 3 of each.
Right. And then when we talk about the world stage and continue that down, we've got the MotoGP series, right? Podiums every year. Yeah,
that ZX-RR, that bike is beautiful. I saw that a little while ago in the museum in Akashi in Japan, and it's that legacy of performance. It's a shame that the global recession came along and it meant that we refocused, but we took Ninja back to its roots and back to World Superbike. And that World Superbike production series really shows Ninja right at its core, where we take an accessible bike that you can go and buy and show that it can win on the world stage. And when we did.
And it's clearly more than just a marketing tool, right? Clearly. Yeah.
It is. It's not only about development, it's not only about reinforcing that DNA and just living where we belong, which is on the racetrack, but also it shows the diversity of the range. In World Superbike, we have the Ninja 400 competing at the highest level, winning championships. We have the ZX6R that's won championships. And then, Johnny Ray on the ZX10RR, absolutely dominating for the better part of a decade. We won 7 out of those 10 World Championships from 1991 to 2020.
Right. Wow. This has certainly been a fun journey so far, and we've got a couple more still to go. Jacob, this week on The Good Times, I want to talk about the future being right here, right now. We've been celebrating the 35th anniversary of this show, the 40th anniversary of the Ninja. What a great way to wrap things up with this motorcycle.
No, exactly right. We've looked back at where Ninja's been and where we've come from and everything that Ninja's been at the forefront of. And it's at the forefront again with this, the world's very first strong hybrid production motorcycle, the Ninja 7 Hybrid.
Yeah.
Electrification's coming on. We've got the Ninja E1 behind us as well. Ninja has been at the forefront of development and technology with the supercharged H2R, with all of the things that we've brought on. And to be standing at the precipice of a new era of motorcycling with Ninja once again taking the helm and being at the forefront, it's a pretty powerful place to be.
It sure is. In 1989, if you said to me we'd be talking about a hybrid motorcycle, like something we didn't even know existed, hybrids? What? This is incredible.
No, and a lot of people are worried that this new era will change motorcycling, but we're looking into the future. We're going to launch the heart of ZX10 technology with Kawasaki by Bimoto, or Bimoto by Kawasaki and World Superbike next year, and launch forward there. But we're also looking at new propulsion for new internal combustion engines, hydrogen fuels, all of those sorts of things. And it doesn't matter where the world goes or how technology changes, we expect that Ninja's going to be part of that development and at the forefront, bringing that exciting, visceral power of the sport that we love and putting forward the good times no matter where we go into the future.
I can't imagine worrying about anything, because all of these developments that we've been looking at over 35 years, right down to this, has just continued to make our sport safer and more fun. What's wrong with that?
It's the good times.